As I said, let's kick things off with a look at the big political stories of the day. Joining me now are Ali Miraj, political commentator, and Jason Reed, also political commentator at Young Voices UK. Good to have you both today. So much to talk about. The main story this week, actually, and it seems to be it was just picking up pace every day, just when you thought it was going to go away. In fact, I say last week, that we started having conversations about Rishi Sunak's wife and her contributions when it comes to paying tax. Ali, last night, confirmation that she will now be paying full UK taxes.
Well, she was paying the appropriate tax beforehand, Claudia-Liza. I think it was a choice that she made, a perfectly legal choice that she made. Now, unfortunately, in politics, if you're the spouse of a leading politician, you've got to bear in mind the public perception of your actions.
Ali, I need to ask, so what do you mean by she was paying full tax?
But she was paying perfectly. She was paying the taxes that she was
paying taxes to the UK and paying taxes to India.
Correct.
And so if she was paying taxes to India, legal. Which means she wasn't paying taxes here in the UK.
No, it was perfectly legal. Claudia-Liza, if you were
absolutely legal. No one's disputing that. The issue is whether it was right.
Well, the question is, there is a question about non-DOMs and whether the whole concept of non-DOMs is something that is palatable or not palatable. Successive governments going back many, many years have not changed the rules on non-DOMs. So if we want to have a debate in the country about whether we think non-DOMs as a concept is justifiable or not justifiable, then let's have it. The question is here, she was doing something that was perfectly legal. Whether that was a good case of judgment given her husband's, the Chancellor, is a different question. She's now come out and said, as you've alluded to, that she will pay all UK tax and change her status. I mean, she is an Indian national, and she was perfectly entitled to do it. I think the bigger question for Rishi Sunak is over this green card issue and what tax he did or did not pay in the UK. That's something that I think he needs to just share with the public. I think people are going to have questions about that. Look, this is a test for Rishi Sunak. I've always said, Claudia-Liza, that he was the greatest thing since Cyrus the Great in the 6th century when he was doling out cash during the pandemic. And if he really wants to be Prime Minister, being detested is a rite of passage. We know that the Prime Minister has the hide of a rhinoceros and bounces back with alarming regularity, right? This is a test for Rishi Sunak. He's had a very easy path in politics, went straight into a safe seat, never had to fight a seat he couldn't win, had a very gilded path, was a minister in local government, then chief secretary to Treasury, and then in very short order became Chancellor. So This is a test. And the question is, does he have the bottle and the stomach to see it out? He is one of the cleverest, most hardworking, diligent ministers in the government, and one of the only grown-ups in the government.
Let's put this to Jason. So, Jason, as far as Ali's concerned, Rishi Sunak's wife, Aksata Murty, did nothing wrong here. Nothing wrong. It's completely legal. Government after government had time and time, chance and chance again to change the laws surrounding the non-dom status. Do you agree with that? Is that a fair point?
Well, it might be true that technically she did nothing wrong, but of course the reason this is in the news, non-dom status isn't that unusual. The reason this particular case is getting so much attention is because she's the wife of a chancellor, and not just any chancellor, but a chancellor who keeps telling us that he is a tax-cutting chancellor, that he believes in the small state, that he believes in people having as much money, as much of their own money as they can, and being able to spend it better than the government, and yet the tax burden is at the highest it's been in 7 decades, and it doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon. And so the hypocrisy stings. And this is why Rishi Sunak's polling numbers have plummeted in the last couple of weeks. He was on a polling high, which you would expect, given, as Ali was saying, the amount of money he was able to dole out during COVID. And of course, we had the Eat Out to Help Out vouchers, which had his personal branding all over them. He's playing politics on easy mode for some time, and he's now finding out what it actually looks like when somebody else is on top, when suddenly Boris Johnson has a bit of momentum again, and there's a lot of scrutiny going on about him, and he's struggling and he's wallowing, flailing a little bit, and his line appears to be, in this interview he's done in which he revealed that his wife will pay more taxes in the UK, his line seems to be, this is a smear campaign to discredit me and to attack my wife, which that might be true, we don't know, but at the same time I'd say that's probably not the strongest line to take, is playing the victim, because the public are not seeing Rishi Sunak or his wife as the victim. People are seeing them as very, very rich people who are not probably not qualified to lead us out of a cost of living crisis, because they don't really understand what it means to be in a cost of living crisis.
So, Ali, one source is estimating that Rishi Sunak's wife, that she avoided £2.1 million a year in UK tax. And just last week, the Chancellor was calling for us to, at a time where many people are struggling, to pay a bit more to help the NHS and social care, which has struggled immensely in COVID. Why couldn't he ask and call upon his wife to do the same thing?
Well, as I've said, Claudia-Liza, his wife had non-dom status, and that she was paying the tax she was due under non-dom status. The question is one of judgment, not one of legality here, right? And that is a question, and Jason's right, that's why it's being splashed over the newspapers. But I must pick up on a couple of things that Jason said. He said that Rishi Sunak proclaims he's a tax cutter, but is overseeing the highest tax burden since the 1950s. Well, yes, he is, and there's a clear reason for that, and that's because we've just been through a pandemic, a once-in-a-300-year event, where he's had to splash $400 billion on borrowing and furlough schemes and other things. And we've also got $2 trillion of public debt in a rising interest rate environment. So unless we want to get real as a public, that we can't just keep borrowing and mortgaging our children's future. There's only two ways that governments raise money. One is taxing you, the other is borrowing. In a rising interest rate environment, Rishi Sunak does not want to borrow any more money. The other point, which I find slightly unsavory, is this whole mantra that's been going around in the press for the last couple of weeks, that Rishi Sunak is too rich to understand how ordinary people feel. Look, his personal wealth is his personal wealth. His own parents, being a GP and a pharmacist, worked very hard to give him the kind of education that a lot of people would die for. He worked hard on the back of that. He didn't squander that opportunity. And yes, he did very well. And indeed, he married very well. Wouldn't a lot of people like to do that? Yes, they would. So I think instead of admonishing the guy, we should say, look, he's done well. We actually respect the fact, yes, you should pay your taxes. Yes, there's a question about judgment here about green cards and other things. Accepted, fine. But this whole nonsense about he's too rich to understand, are we to say that anyone who is above minimum wage should not go into Parliament? Of course we're not. And
really, really quickly, Jason, do you think it's right that we target the Chancellor's wife? She isn't at number 10. She isn't at number 11. She doesn't look over our finances, the country's finances. Rishi, I don't think in all the time I've known him as a politician, I say know him, seen him work as a politician, as a minister, as Chancellor, I don't think I've ever seen him as angry as I've seen him over the last couple of weeks. Gosh, it looks like he wants to slap somebody over coming for his wife. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, this is exactly it. And this is the part that I can't get away from, is that he seemed to be surprised by all this. He says he's the victim of a smear campaign. And now, of course, they've backtracked and said that his wife is going to pay a lot more tax in the UK, which, of course, if they'd done that originally, then this wouldn't have been a scandal at all to begin with. It feels like Rishi Sunak is learning what it really means to be operating at the top level of politics in normal times. This is his first real test as a senior politician. I think if he can come through this, and if he can find his polling numbers going up again on the other side of this, he'll be in a very, very strong position. But at the moment, it's not clear that he is experienced enough or politically mature enough to come through the other side of this.
Guys, let me know what you think. You guys listening out there, 0344 499 1000. I have to say £2 million. If that is the case, if we will be getting £2 million a year from all of this, that will be very, very nice for our NHS. Ali, Jason, stick with me. After the break, we will be talking of Boris Johnson as he arrives in Ukraine, promising more weapons to the country in its invasion there. Ali Mirage and Jason Reid are still with us looking at this weekend's top stories. Now, Ali, Jason, as much, we're talking about very important stories here, very, very important to the nation. However, I have to tell you, the Grand National is kicked off. And once you get a winner, I will be interrupting you to announce who has won. There's a lot riding on this here at the talkRADIO headquarters. We've got some sweepstakes. Sarah, she's supposed to be doing her job. She's not right now. Her face is stuck to the screen. So, yeah, Ali, Jason, just to give you a heads up. But yes, for now, let's talk Ukraine, shall we? Because Boris Johnson is there. He has held talks in Kyiv with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. Dana Street's also said it's to show solidarity with the Ukrainian people, and it follows £100 million of weapons being promised to Ukraine after the bombing of refugees at a railway station. Jason, this is a big move for Boris Johnson. The first time he's gone to Ukraine in all of this.
This is a big move. It's a big moment. Of course, they were keen to keep it under wraps, to keep everything absolutely secure until he was already in. The first we heard of it was when the Ukrainian embassy's Twitter account posted that photo of him sitting opposite President Volodymyr Zelensky. This is a huge announcement today of £100 million worth of weapons, as you say. I think this is absolutely the minimum that we should be doing, given it's hard to deny. If it wasn't clear before, it's very clear now that Russia is committing war crimes in Ukraine. They're doing unconscionably awful things, such as this latest incident of bombing refugees at a train station. They've been able to do this, it seems, because they recently announced that phase one of the war was over and they were going to stop their attacks in the west of the country. Of course, what that means is that Ukraine put up a much fiercer resistance than they were expecting, and so they were not able to just take over the government in the way that they thought they would, and so instead they are focusing on the Donbass regions in the east, one of which is Donetsk, which is where this awful train station bombing happened. And so I think this is very much not the last incident of this kind that we are going to see over the next few weeks, and so it can make us proud to be British that the senior members of the Ukrainian government have been saying today how important Britain is and how we are the leader of the international coalition, that we are leading the way in supplying weapons to Ukraine and giving them the best chance they possibly can to fight Russia and keep them out.
And Ali, this comes just days after the European Union President, Ursula von der Leyen, she visited Ukraine to see the horrors in Bucha, and then now to see this attack of refugees at a train station. Gosh, I don't know if both of you actually got to see any of the pictures from that train station. It's horrific. It's horrific. And Ali, one of the things, one of the reporters who was there pointed out was the suitcases, the luggage, phones were ringing. I can only imagine, friends, loved ones, family members trying to get hold of people just to see if they got out okay. And you only hope that they're one of the people who've been just either they're okay or injured and they will be okay later. But it is incredibly horrific. Zelensky's calling it evil.
Well, we've seen this film play out before, Claudia-Liza, in Syria. So look, in wars, particularly wars being persecuted by Russia here directly or by proxy in Syria, are nasty, unpleasant, and people die in the most horrific circumstances. I think that's very clear. The thing that I'm still slightly confused about, and I've been saying this for a few weeks now, is what Zelensky's strategy is. It seems to be at the moment that he's going for a strategy of pushing the Russians out completely from his territory, including Donbass, Crimea, and everything else. Now, that's very laudable. And I wish him well if that is indeed his strategy. The question is how many people have to die for that to be achieved, and is it achievable? Is it a realistic goal in itself? The other option is that Putin gets deposed by a foreign power or by his own people, which seems highly unlikely to me. So I still feel, and Zelensky only last week was alluding to this, that at the end of the day, however unpalatable it may be for Vladimir Zelensky, and indeed it is unpalatable, he is going to have to sit down with Vladimir Putin and come to a peace agreement which will involve territory of some kind. Now, the question is, how long is this going to go on for? It's certainly the case that the Ukrainians are applauding the UK, and Boris Johnson's been the most vociferous leader in trying to push that strategy of pushing the Russians back completely from Ukraine, restoring the territorial integrity of the country and not giving an inch. That is fine, because we're not the ones in the front line dying here, but I question whether that's actually realistic. Certainly, the 100 million is welcome. They're giving anti-aircraft missiles and anti-tank weapons as well. But again, I just come back to the question of, what is the strategy ultimately here, and where is this all leading?
Interesting point you're making there, Ali. I have to say that, Jason, I have listened to and spoken to a number of commentators, a number of people, watching the events unfold in Ukraine, watching how this war is heading, where it's going. Going to be speaking to another one later today. And it seems much like you and I, people around the world, and indeed Putin, very, very surprised on that fight back, the Zelensky, the Ukrainian fight back. Is there a chance... I'm pretty sure Ali is actually completely right. But even so, is there a chance Ukraine can fight this? And if indeed it does come to what Ali is suggesting, and many commentators are suggesting that it will come to Ukraine having to give up territory, I don't know, am I getting a whiff of pre-World War II, Neville Chamberlain giving up parts of the Czech Republic, and what could that lead to if we do give that up to Putin? How do you see this going?
Look, just being at the point that we're at now with everything the Ukrainian people and army and government have achieved is way, way beyond what anybody expected, given the knowledge we had when the war first broke out a few weeks ago. And so I think it's very easy for us to sit here in our very privileged position and say, oh, well, they should just give up territory, shouldn't they, and put an end to the war. But would we do the same if we were in that position? If we were invaded, would we give up Dover or Kent or the Isle of Wight just to make the invaders go away and hope that appeases them? The Russian state is not acting in a rational way. It's not acting in a way that suggests it is going to stick to any ceasefire agreement. In fact, they did not stick to agreements that were made previously. And I think Zelensky is not only laudable, but I think he's doing what he has to do, which is to stand up for the sovereignty and the independence of his country, setting a precedent for the rest of the world as well. We've got the Chinese government possibly eyeing up Taiwan, and if Russia's invasion had gone more successfully in Ukraine, perhaps we would have had a real issue there, and goodness knows where else in the world. And so Zelensky is on the front line, and the Ukrainian people are on the front line in the fight for democracy and freedom. And I think all we can do is supply them with everything they ask for, give them all the weapons they could possibly need, and hope that they can win this fight for their sake and for ours as well.
OK, I'm going to have to leave it there, sadly, because I've got some news on the Grand National. But Jason Reed for Young Voices and Ali Mirage, a political commentator, so good talking to you both.